We're going to make a start. We're still waiting on the Mayor. She's just about coming now. Anyway, in her place, Deputy Mayor Kai Fong's going to do a karakia.
Pēnoi tātou. Tūtawa mai ronga, tūtawa mai raro, tūtawa mai roto, tūtawa mai waho. Kia tau ai te mauri tū, te mauri ora, ki te katoa, haumi e, hui e, tā ki.
Okay, the meeting is now in live stream. Is that correct? Right. Could you please make sure your mobile phones, welcome Mayor, could you please make sure that your mobile phones are turned off? Right. Call for any apologies. Are there any apologies? No. Any declarations of interest? Nope. Are there no urgent items? There's no urgent items brought forward for today that have been raised by the Chair to me or the CE. Is that correct? No minor matters have been raised with the CE. Yes, Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question on process. Last week we all received a notice of motion request from Councillor Lee, and then silence. Normally we would see an email come back saying yes or no. What was the outcome of that?
Yep, Greg's going to speak to that, but there was a process around apologies that you haven't been fed back.
Apologies for that, Councillor Patterson, and we'll cover that off and make sure that in future that doesn't happen again. We have been in contact with Councillor Lee, who raised those notices of motion. Those notices of motion were declined on a number of grounds, and we have fed that information back to Councillor Lee. So going forward, we will make sure that all councillors are made aware of that. Apologies for that.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's the minor matters covered. Okay, next item is the minutes of the last meeting. I'll ask for a mover and a seconder, and I'll read out the motion that the minutes of the Audit and Risk Committee meeting held on the 17th of April 2006 be confirmed as a true and a correct record. Thank you, Mayor, Deputy Mayor Kai Fong and Councillor Wang. Okay. Put the motion to the vote. Those in favour say aye. Carried. Any against? No, I suspect. Okay, right. Next item is presentations. We don't have any of those. The work program, which is on page 18 of the Estella notes. I ask for a mover and a seconder and I read out the motion that the report, Audit and Risk Committee work program be received. Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Sanford. Those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. I invite Greg to give us a very quick overview of this document.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, good afternoon, councillors. Just really quickly, this work program will form part of the agenda going forward. We will be using this as a track as well as a forward planning mechanism so that the staff can see what's coming up and what you are expecting as a committee. One of the lines further down in this work program is around committee performance, and so you'll see that in quarter 4 there will be a report coming back on committee performance, of which this work program will form a part of that to inform what has been covered. So we do have 1 or 2 items on here that we will update based on previous committee meetings, so that we do keep a track of what is coming to this committee. Thank you.
Are there any points of clarification or questions on this document? I just have one, and I discussed it with Greg very briefly, but there's one permutation that we could put in here, which is items completed but not scheduled. And as you recall, the last meeting we talked about writing off some assets, and they were unscheduled. So it's just a matter of keeping a record of things, as Greg rightly points out, because at the end of the year we're going to do a performance review of the committee, and this forms part of that in meeting our expectations of our plan. Okay, moving to the next item. Item 7.3, the interim audit report. 7.2. Oh, beg your pardon on this one. 7.2, sorry, apologies. The actions register. This is on page 21. Ask for a mover and a seconder to the recommendation that the actions registered of the Audit and Risk Committee for the second quarter of 2026 be received. Can I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Sanford and Councillor Baker. I'm going to put it to the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Right, invite Greg to overview the report, please.
Thank you, councillors, and thank you, Mr. Chair. So, just quickly, I'll run through the actions that are on the actions register. The very first point is the health, safety, and wellbeing performance for the period 1 December 2025 to 28 February 2026, and just noting that there is an update included in this report for this meeting today. We have a completed action on the computer software asset impairment, which was sent to councillors on the 13th of May 2026. Annual report review, management response to recommendations. We have 3 items that are still ongoing that are on this actions register. So the first one is to discuss with auditors the possibility for receiving technical update training from audit team or identification of existing resources to assist. There may be scope for any training provided to be leveraged across more than one local council. The Office of the Auditor General may also be able to assist in this area. The note that we have in the actions register is that opportunities for training will be discussed with council's appointed auditor for later this year. This is an ongoing action at this point. The second action is around the annual report review, management response to recommendations. So the Audit and Risk Committee to discuss and agree with the auditors issue escalation protocols so that any issue escalation process is as effective as possible. With our current note, on this is that council notes this recommendation and the action point for members of the Audit and Risk Committee to agree this recommendation with council's auditors. The next one is around providing council governance training regarding the audit process, and the aim is to assist councillors to better understand the audit process and what they as governors should expect with regards to interactions with the auditors and good practice. At this stage, the comment is council has engaged with the Office of the Auditor General and the Department of Internal Affairs to design appropriate training, which will be delivered later this year. We have an action item around Treasury reporting, so committee workshop to be scheduled for deep dive into Treasury reporting. That's an ongoing action. The long-term plan 2434 supporting information, which is around quarterly Treasury reporting to be brought to the committee. This report is included in the agenda for today. While we have this as ongoing, Mr. Chair, we'll take your guidance as to whether this is to stay on this actions register or form part of the work program going forward.
Okay.
The last one, Mr. Chair, is around the actions register report, and that the work program is included in the agenda for today. Once again, taking your guidance as to whether these are completed actions.
Are there any questions from Greg? Okay, just to answer off some of his questions, there's 3 items here from in relation to Audit New Zealand. It would be quite good, I know they're ongoing, it would be quite good maybe next time if we could get some dates put in there. I'm quite keen on having dates to get so we know when things are going to happen by. So that would be good rather than having it ongoing, because otherwise ongoing things tend to slip. And I know we're really busy, but if we are that busy, then we need to push them out so that we have them scheduled. There was something here on Treasury reporting in the committee workshop scheduled for a deep dive reporting, and I notice it's ongoing and it's outstanding since November 2024. Have we got a date for that? Maybe, Deputy, maybe this is a question for David to comment on. And I guess it's probably a question of, it's also for the committee to decide whether they want to continue with having a deep dive into Treasury reporting, and do the committee generally understand Treasury reporting, or do they need possibly some training on it?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have been in discussions with the governance team around the best time for a workshop, competing with a rather full calendar for workshops in an LTP year and a number of other work streams, but I will commit to working with Greg and the Mayor and Deputy Mayor to see when best that might occur, especially given that we will be holding a workshop for the review of the Treasury policy later in the year through the RTP process as well.
Okay, that might be a good time to put it with the Treasury policy, but is there just, I just want to ask everyone, is there a general feeling that you would like to know more about the Treasury area? Are you feel that you're confident in it, something, or are you just some general comments anyway, you got any thoughts? Oh, okay, leave it at that. And the quarterly reporting of the Treasury reporting, the quarterly Treasury reporting brought to this committee. Yeah, I'd like to see a little bit of changes in that, and David and I will work on that, and maybe we can probably bring a different report to the committee. Okay, so that's those items closed off. The next item on the agenda is the interim. Here we go. Audit New Zealand interim report. I ask for a mover and second on this, that the Audit New Zealand 2026 interim report to Council be received. Could I have a mover and a second, please? Councillor Barker and Councillor Wang. I'm going to put the motion to a vote. Those in favour say aye. Against? Against? No. And the motion's carried. Okay, I invite David and Renee to speak to this report. Thank you very much. Welcome, Renee. It's nice to have you with us here today, and I understand you're going to be an observer, so thanks for making the time to come along.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, committee members. So my report covers Audit New Zealand's 2026 interim report to Council on the work they have done on the interim audit work to date on their annual report. So the purpose of the Audit New Zealand's report is to keep Council informed as to the purpose and scope of why they're on site, what they're looking at the control environment, and giving us an idea as a Council of what their areas of focus are. But to my right, I have Renee Funsdale, who is our new Audit Director, and I will invite her to overview her report.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you for having me today. It's really nice to be here in person. I have three really quick thoughts that I'll just share with you, and then happy to take any questions. So firstly, the audit is in flight, the 2026 audit. We have been, the strategy is to bring forward as much work as we can during the year, and that's been really going well. So just wanted to share with you that the process is already ongoing, and just a big thank you to management who's been assisting us and helping us through this process. Secondly, I just wanted to acknowledge the sector pressures at the moment. As auditors, we're very, very aware of the unprecedented environment of compounding pressures that local government leadership are under at the moment. And just to give you a little bit of comfort that we are aware, we will do whatever we can to assist and work, with management through this process, while we take this journey, together. And then just thirdly, I just wanted to highlight my last paragraph on my report on the first page. I would just like to highlight the most significant risk for this year's audit is in the PPE section. We've got some valuations to go through, we've got some fair value assessments to go through, and then all the normal PPE work, which is all the transactions for the year. So just highlighting that's the most significant risk for the audit. It's not specific to this council, the risk that I'm highlighting, it's a sector-wide concern that we have, and we see a lot of pressure in that area. At this early stage, I don't have any specific concerns in that regard, but I just thought it's wise to just note that as the most significant risk for the 2026 audit. I'm then happy to take any questions. Thank you.
I just had one question, and I raised it with you yesterday. The local, and for the benefit of everyone else, the local audit's done well. You're asking that we include something in our annual statements to the effect of what we're doing under local audit done well, but it seems to me that with the Head Start process going underway, that what we're proposing in terms of a CCO and whatever those outcomes are may not necessarily be consistent with what you're asking. So I'm just saying, well, we probably can't meet that criteria. And I just wondered where the Audit Office stood on it. And this seems to be probably a generic statement that all the Audit New Zealand people are putting out, like yourself. Could you comment on that?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. That's a really good question. I think the position of myself and the office at this stage is that that requirement is very flexible at this point. What we are going to ask councils or suggest is that there is some kind of disclosure in the annual report. That note might not even be the best place for this council to put it, but some transparent information to the to your community in terms of where you are standing at that point where the annual report's adopted. And I'm conscious that it's a couple of months away, and there's still some water that needs to go under the bridge.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for your comment, Renee. Thanks for your report. And we have one from Mayor Tapsell. Sorry.
Thank you. Just on that note as well, I was just, from what I'm reading, it appears that you're just wanting a description of the agreed model or some explanation of what it would be. I just wanted to check because we're currently working on a model with Eastern districts, but we still are some time away from what the representation on that model may look like. So just checking, you're just, I suppose, checking from a function and a form perspective, not necessarily representation. Depending how it lands, of course, as soon as you go multi-council CCOs, we still need to work out how all of the districts are represented in that. So I'm just wanting to clarify that that's not what you're seeking yet. And then I think it will be fine.
Yes, thank you. Through the Chair, that is, we're not asking for anything in excess of just where you are at that stage and what the story, but it's Council's choice on how and where you want to tell that story. We'll just make sure from an audit perspective that there's nothing in your disclosures that's inconsistent. So at this stage, it's still fairly open and flexible in terms of what you say in there, but absolutely nothing in terms of a process that you haven't completed yet.
Andrew has a question.
Actually, maybe more of a statement. And just maybe you can confirm if I've interpreted this incorrectly. What I understood from the Office of the Auditor General's requirements are for councils in their annual report to give an indication of their progress in implementing their water services delivery plan. Because the Water Services Delivery Plan is the statutory document that Council is required to adopt, which we've done. And so we're well on track to be able to update against that document. Do you see that? Do you have any issue with that approach? There was a Water Services Delivery Plan issued by councils, approved by the Secretary for Local Government, and that's the plan we are working to. If you get a report against progress on that plan, would that be sufficient for your office?
Yes, that sounds absolutely reasonable and sufficient. There's always a question about completeness, just to make sure that there's no other decisions that was made in between that might give a different view, but absolutely correct.
Okay, any other further questions? Right. Okay, well, thanks, Renee. Thanks, David. Appreciate it. Thanks for your time. Okay, the next item on the agenda is item 7.4, which is on page 33 of Stella. Ask from mover and seconder of the motion that the report Head Start Reform Program, Governance, Evaluation Framework and Strategic Risk Oversight be received. Can I have a mover, please? Mayor Tapsell and Deputy Mayor Kai Fong. Thank you. And I'm going to put the motion to a vote. Those in favour, say aye. Against? Passed. Right. Welcome. We have David. Who do we have here? So we've got Sam and Craig. Beg your pardon. Sorry. Welcome to us. Thank you. Who's going to speak to the report?
Well, we probably both will, but
okay, cool. Thank you.
I'll start. So, kia ora everyone. So this report, I know that we've probably been head started to death lately. So this is the real focus of just bringing the specific risks to the Audit and Risk Committee. So helpfully Mr. Patterson here has helped produce the risk-specific stuff. So the idea today is not to talk about anything to do with the ongoing project besides risk. We'll have other opportunities to do that next week. So that's what I thought I would just preface this with before I hand it over to Mr. Patterson for any insights he wants to add to that.
Through you, Chair, and committee members, good afternoon. Substantively, the purpose of the report, as Sam has outlined, is oversight of three matters. One is whether an appropriate evaluation framework is being developed. That's the first one. The second is whether the key strategic and enterprise risks are being identified and assessed. And the third, whether the decision-making process is structured in a way that supports transparency, defensibility, and informed future decision-making. And so in my view, the report substantively draws your attention to three key areas. The first is outlined in section 4.1 from page 35. Participation in the Head Start program pathway does not remove Council's obligations under the Local Government Act, and any future decision-making will still need to satisfy the statutory decision-making requirements, significance considerations, procedural fairness, obligations, and the transparent assessment processes. Secondly, around decision assurance, as outlined in sections 4.2 to 4.6, the evaluation framework remains under development and significant information gaps still remain at this time. The purpose of the framework is to ensure that future decisions are informed by evidence, structured analysis, and transparent consideration of trade-offs rather than assumptions or incomplete information where that information is available. And then thirdly, the strategic risk oversight, 4.5 to 7.4 reflected in the report, is to identify the number of elevated strategic risks, including the governance risk, financial sustainability uncertainty, stakeholder confidence, tangata whenua relationships, the implementation complexity, and the government policy uncertainty. These are not risks associated with any particular option. They are risks associated with the reform process itself and require ongoing governance and oversight as the program evolves. Therefore, the report should be viewed as an early governance and risk oversight report for the emerging strategic program rather than an assessment of any of the preferred reform outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Craig and Sam. Is there any questions of clarification, any comments that anyone has, any questions that they want to raise? Thank you, Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, gentlemen, for your report. I'd just like to focus on the governance and legal considerations. And I'm pleased to see the advice that you've got in this report is consistent with the Simpson-Grierson advice. There is no statutory exemption from the existing Local Government Act decision-making obligations. That's a significant point right there. The Simpson-Grierson advice refers to Fitzgerald versus Muldoon. Is it fair to say that the ministers that are pushing Head Start are encouraging councils to act unlawfully?
I'll answer that one. So I think ultimately that will be up to the ministers and the ministers' legal advice to go through, but the advice that I think is clear in the Simpson-Grierson report is that there's probably a difference between the council decision-making and the central government decision-making. So in the view of the government, that while council's making a decision, it's not making a final decision, and well, I guess we do have got into that really that's not ultimately the case, but the central government makes the final decision making. So from the advice that we've received so far, that there isn't a suggestion that that's the case, but that would be ultimately up for the minister and his department to get that advice, whether they felt that that was the case that they were doing. But we're completely focused on what we are doing.
Yes, but we will have to make a decision come end of July, and I understand that that decision would be irreversible from the advice we've received so far. Is that the case?
So far, that's correct. But yeah, and we've also been very cognizant in the way that we've structured the Head Start program, including having the 3 separate decision-making processes and the public engagement, which meets our significance and engagement policy. While admittedly, it doesn't meet our full consultation, it does meet the engagement process of our significance and engagement policy. So we're in a space that we are confident that we'll discharge our legal obligations, but yeah, that it's ultimately up to all of you in the room to determine if the decision that you're making either way is in the best interests of our community as required under the Local Government Act.
Sorry, I need a little clarification of that. Are you suggesting that a little bit of engagement on social media that we can do between now and the end of July is going to satisfy the requirements under the significance and engagement policy for as significant a decision as this? Certainly the advice was it was unequivocal that this is a highly significant decision.
Yes, so our significant engagement policy has multiple steps and criteria in it, and so one of them is that engagement is appropriate to the time and space that we have to make these decisions, and so given the time and space that we have to make these decisions, it's impossible to do full community consultation, and that's why we've chosen to do engagement as something that's appropriate to the time and space that we have passed to the Chief Executive.
Yeah, can I, through you, Mr. Chair, this is quite a interesting line of questioning and discussion. Ultimately might prove to be somewhat circular because it may depend on what your decision ultimately is. And if I can give you a practical example of what I mean is, should there be a large natural disaster or event, Council might need to make decisions that are very significant and normally would consult on the community with. But because of the short time frame in which Council has to act, through reasons outside of Council's control, it may be appropriate under those circumstances to not follow what you might do outside of those circumstances. This situation is in some ways analogous to that because the time frame has not been created by Council, it's been created by central government, it's an externality, and therefore Council has only the options to choose whether to act within that time frame or not. As has been outlined in this report, a key pillar of risk mitigation to Council's decision-making process is for us to bring you all of those options as required by the Local Government Act, and then for Council to make a decision on the basis of that analysis.
But in this case, the analogy breaks down because Council doesn't have to act. There is, in fact, no statutory framework for Head Start.
And through you, Mr. Chair, and that we expect will be one of the options we give you in that paper.
And just to clarify for everyone's benefit, you're planning on putting forward an option to proceed with local government reform under Part 3 of the Local Government Act instead of Head Start. Do I understand that correctly?
I'll answer more generally. We will give you all of the options we think are appropriate, all of the reasonably practical options.
Thank you, Andrew.
Yep, mid-tips off. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you. Thank you very much, Craig, and also Sam. I suppose my questions actually align to the outside of our control factors and how we manage or mitigate that risk. And that risk is that the Minister does have the power and discretion to force us to change, be removed, such as the regional councillors, or transition. which the transition is actually the big risk if we choose to proceed. So when it comes to the 29th of July, I found this report incredibly helpful for just getting our heads around what would have been a usual process and clearly what the risks are. But what I'd like to see is moving some of these key points into that 29th of July to ensure that it's not just listed, but the key points in there actually have some information for us to consider how to, again, manage or mitigate that risk. And I suppose to make that into a question, there is, of course, the bespoke legislation that Cabinet has said that they will create legislation to make relevant proposals that fit the criteria work. So how do you, in these initial stages, see this from a risk perspective when at the same time that we're being pushed to change, the Cabinet is, or government decision makers, are saying, and we will adopt new legislation. We can't right now due to the election, but in May next year, you will know, and this may be legislated. How do we manage that risk when the legal parameters in which we'd normally operate can or will be changed? So I suppose there's no right or wrong in this situation because we're all doing our best with the information we have.
And I think probably actually that last statement kind of covers it, that we will be all doing our best for this. So the real focus is that we do what's in the best interests of our community, and that's whether a decision is made or not made. So in the meantime, we'll be doing our very best to get what relevant information that we can to ensure that we can, well, you can all make a more informed decision. The risk with that is that we're never going to have the information that we would usually have. So this is probably a very good example of almost, it will be, I imagine, a completely risk-based decision whether we proceed or not, as opposed to usually when council makes decisions, it has an amount of risk, but it ends up being probably a facts-based decision rather than a fact/risk decision that's probably much more weighted toward risk. And so we'll make sure that we present this risk information in that final decision, but also show what information that we have that might mitigate some of that risk. And I think the Chief Executive has an additional point to add.
Yeah, thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. I think the weather analogy actually carries quite well forward. Every year, this council makes decisions on investing in infrastructure with probabilistic models of what weather events might hold in the future. The only thing we know about those models is they're all wrong, because what transpires is almost always not what's modelled. And in this case, Your Worship, you asked about what the potential actions of central government who make the laws of this country are. We're not going to have that information. So it's analogous to looking at it as a weather event that you can't quite predict. And so as Mr. Fallows and Mr. Patterson have indicated, the risk-based approach to it probably is what we will largely lean on in order to provide our advice to you. When you're choosing between options that are asymmetrically known, that's the only way to approach it. Councillor Patterson.
Is that me, Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just drawing our attention back to our hui last week, where we dealt with this particular subject. You made some very interesting comments during that. My questions to you, Sam, if I may just go back to those. I was asking about the impact of Head Start on the referendum process, and in fact New Zealand has only ever had 3 binding referendums. The first one was the electoral referendum in 1993, which gave us MMP. The second one was the end-of-life choice referendum, and then there have been, I guess you could say, some local ones which happen every 3 years. I don't recall the last time we did it, for the liquor licensing establishment, and the only other one was the Māori wards referendum. That is a binding referendum. So the reason I'm raising this is because you touched on a very good point, acting in the best interests of our community. So Rotorua voted to adopt those. They're supposed to be in 2 election cycles. When I raised this question, you suggested that the government, and whatever form that we choose, the next unitary authority, you used the comparison to a company. So your company has some agreements in place, that company is then bought out or changes shape, and therefore those agreements are no longer in place going forward. How will that impact upon our relationships and agreements that we have with our iwi partners? We've been told that it won't. So how can central government say a referendum, of which there have only ever been 3, can be wiped out and not the same applied to our partnerships and iwi agreements? I think this is a really big risk.
Yeah, thank you for that. And it's probably a question that the government minister is probably better placed to answer. But if I look at it from a purely legal sense, in New Zealand, the government has parliamentary sovereignty, so they can decide whatever they want and enact whatever they want that goes over anything else. And we see that on a number of occasions, whether it's a case that's passed and they decide to change the legislation. I mean, I don't want to bag on central government, but so a good example is, say, the leaky building crisis, that once cases started to incorporate central government into those, they passed legislation that said central government wasn't responsible, and councils became ultimately the last person standing in those cases. And so I suppose that's one example of how in the local government space that parliamentary sovereignty can impact on local councils. So it's probably quite an unhelpful answer, but ultimately those are political decisions that will be made, and so it'll be up to individuals to lobby their political members. And this process will also go through a select committee process. I imagine those are the types of things that, if councils across the country progress, would come up in those processes, and also the work that I suppose I'd encourage you all to ensure is done while we're evaluating potential governance structures and options. But there's no, I suppose, the short answer of all that, there's no guarantee, but there is the opportunity to submit a proposal that protects those referendum results.
Thank you for trying.
Councillor Barker, I think you were next.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to go back to the question from Mayor Tapsell and some of the answers that were given around our decision-making and being able to make informed decisions, and noting that you made the comment that it could be a completely risk-based kind of a decision. That being the case, and taking into consideration what you've said around how you're going to present information, is there a chance that that could include weightings and probability and severity of risks in a kind of a matrix that allows us to very clearly see some of those things transpiring? Because there's a lot of words and it's quite hard as a decision maker, considering the fact that the government has been at pains to suggest that this is a voluntary process. You know, a lot of the legislation binds us to other courses of action. So I'm just trying to understand, you know, possible mechanisms for helping us to make this decision in a really prudent manner. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we'll do our utmost to do that and make it as clear as possible. And part of that in the paper that's coming to the next council meeting is that as much as possible we've tried to distill down what we think will be the key comparisons between different options, including the backstop and doing nothing option, to, I suppose, limit as much as possible the noise to things that we have clear information on, and that we think with your guidance will be decisions that you need to make, because there's probably thousands of things out there, and I think we're trying to eliminate as much as possible the noise that will exist there, and then ultimately you'll have information in front of you, probably not to the level that I imagine any of us would like, but hopefully is clear enough to make a decision either way that you can probably go to sleep that night, I hope. But I'll pass to the Chief Executive.
Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. You're quite right that the government has portrayed this as a voluntary process. At the mayoral forum, which is live streamed, I asked the senior official whether it was a voluntary process all the way through to the final submission, and I think the answer I got was effectively, well, it's voluntary until it's not voluntary, which was actually even less helpful than some of our answers today, which I think is quite remarkable. So that factors into the decision as well, because if ultimately your 9th of August, or our potential 9th of August submission is the last material opportunity to commit to a unitary authority, then that changes how significant that decision is, as this paper outlines. To your question about can we make this paint by numbers, the answer is safely no. At the same time, if there's paint by numbers at one end of the spectrum and purely vibes at the other end of the spectrum, clearly we'd try and bring you closer towards the paint by numbers and further away from the vibes, for all the reasons you can see in the paper that we've outlined. As we see it as our role to safeguard your decision-making process. And that's where the challenge comes from. You all will be seeking the best outcomes for the community. As staff, we only have access to information that the government has shared about one option, which is Head Start, and so we can give you advice on that. There's deliberate, I would surmise, strategic ambiguity about what the backstop is, and it's very hard to quantify that and turn that into a ranked, some ranked options for you. So we will, as Mr. Fellows has said, we will do our best to structure this, but ultimately we want to take you away from the vibes only, but I suspect we won't be able to get you to the paint by numbers scenario.
No, the closer you get us to the paint by numbers, the better. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Deputy Mayor Kaifong, you had a...
Thank you, Chair. I think my question's pretty similar to Councillor Barker, and it's really around how do we use this process, and perhaps I'm getting ahead of myself with the next paper, but just, we're in an imperfect information situation and with the really tight time frame, and you've identified the risks, but what we don't have is what is the Council's risk tolerance to some of these things. I would say maybe for Councillor Lee it might be that, there's no risk to do anything that doesn't include full consultation, but others might say, well, actually we're prepared to take some risk in that space so that we can get this process through in time. So it's how do we go to, and within this time frame again, do the process to look at the risks that we are prepared to take or not and how far we're prepared to go, and then how do we turn that into a weighted pros and cons of the options of proceeding and also of not proceeding, because I think that even if we get the paint by numbers, we still have to have a steady hand that we're painting between the lines and we're within the, and so it's really difficult, because we've had all these risks outlined, but it may be that some of us will go, well, actually, we don't think that's a risk. We're happy to take that risk. Others will go, no, we're not. And so just wanting to refine this process to make the decision-making a bit easier when it does come in July. Sorry, there was a big long question.
No, that's all right. So there's probably two things. There's probably an overall risk tolerance discussion that I think Council probably needs to have generally, which I think is probably coming up later in this meeting, and then probably concurrently to that, kind of the long risk and the short risk thing is a risk tolerance around this space, and so that'll be ongoing work that we do in this space, which if we get the risk tolerance discussion done in and around the same time, we can do it concurrently, but I think there will be a risk tolerance that will need to be done in this space, and whether that happens in and around the workshops for that final decision making or at that final decision making will still need to be determined, but I'll pass to the Chief Executive.
I'm about to, through you, Mr. Chair, about to create some work for our risk lead there. I wonder if this committee is supportive of that approach of trying to apply the risk tolerance and appetite language to the criteria you've already adopted. That allows us the start of a framework whereby we can workshop through, well, you've approved 6 criteria. What's your risk tolerance on each of those? And potentially we can workshop that, which will then give us the sort of framework that we can then use to evaluate each option against those 6 criteria for your final decision. So I guess that's not covered in this paper, and I'm potentially we're solutionising on the go, but if there's support from the committee to apply that risk tolerance approach, we can start it and apply it on this decision using the criteria you've already adopted, and potentially workshop that.
So how did we get some consensus over that opinion, or is that for a later date?
Now's the time.
Now's the time. So those in favour of it?
Chair, perhaps I could just make some comments, just given the question that I just asked around that. I think that would actually be quite useful just to enable some better decision making for the councillors, given that, as I mentioned, it's imperfect information and it's under a really tight time frame. So the more information, guidance, assessment of the risks will allow us to make a better decision within those parameters. So I would support that. That's just my view.
Yes, Councillor Baker.
Thank you.
Baker.
I would also support, as Deputy Mayor Kaifong has said, and that relates to the criteria that we're using for analysing options, but there's also the risk around our stakeholder confidence and our transparency and procedural fairness and all those other considerations which are outside of the options analysis as well. So they're probably a different set of criteria as well, are they?
Any other comments? Councillor Lee?
Thank you, Chair. I wouldn't find that approach to be particularly helpful. I think we are wrestling with a complex matter, and trying to fit these complexities into a grid, making it a paint by numbers, it seems quite an artificial construct. It's not ultimately going to be helpful. But I do have another question once this item is over.
Is there anyone else got any comments that they wanted to add? Because I just want to get a feel for whether we want to go ahead with this or not. And at the moment, it would appear we've got two for and one against. Mayor Tipsel.
Yep, definitely for. And I had suggested that this could come in a more detailed format to the 29th meeting, but totally open to having also a workshop or a discussion specifically about this with all the councillors prior to that 29th and the report being received the week before.
Does anyone else have any comments regarding it? Councillor Brown.
Mr. Chair, I'm also in support, given that there is some real complexity to it. Anything that would help us simplify or illustrate the risks, I can only see as beneficial. The question I would also have, and it's not necessarily part of this, and tell me I'm wrong, but there's some rewards that come with taking this risk, so how do we balance that? But generally I'm in support of the proposal.
Okay. Councillor Wang, do you want to give me your comments? And we just go around the table, I think, and then we can just get a feel. Are you for or against, sir?
Sorry, yes, I'm for that.
And Councillor Tamara Benfield?
Yeah, I think any type of tool that assists us to better understand our risks and make it clearer for our decision making, I think is helpful. I think we need all options on the table.
Thank you. Councillor Sanford.
Yeah, likewise, I'm also in favour, and my preference would be that we have a workshop to discuss what us as councillors, what our risk appetite is for each of these, because depending on the situation, my risk appetite varies greatly across these profiles.
Okay. Councillor Maxwell. Dane. Councillor Patterson.
Like Councillor Sanford, I have various concerns across various areas, so I would like to have this further explained, particularly what I raised earlier.
Okay, thank you. Could I just suggest that whatever we do, we make it simple, don't make it complicated. And if we make it simple, it makes it easier. Okay, we'll take it as an action and set up as a workshop going forward. Okay, there was one other question someone had, sorry. Councillor Lee.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think what nobody's articulated so far is what the primary risk that we're wrestling with here is, which, if I understand correctly, would be a potential judicial review of our 29 July decision if we hopped on the Head Start conveyor belt. Is it? You'd agree?
Yeah, that's correct. And also the potential judicial review for not hopping on board with the Head Start conveyor belt. So that's primarily in our mind of making a decision. Well, actually, all decisions, particularly because I lead the legal space, so it would be us worrying about that. But I think for a decision that's important as this, the decision either way, I think will attract a level of public concern, and so our aim is always to put you all, give you all the information you have to make a decision that keeps you all and our organisation safe.
And it's really important, I think, that we all understand the rules of the game here, and in particular, circling back to Fitzgerald versus Muldoon, Prime Minister Muldoon thought that he could legislate from the podium, from the media press release, and that seems to be the concern that whoever that law firm was, Simpson Grierson, had in this regard, because if we do get judicially reviewed, are we going to be tested upon the law as it stands on the 29th of July, or are we going to be tested on what press releases the ministers issue, or what questions the Department of Internal Affairs answer in these meetings?
So ultimately, we would be tested on our compliance with our decision making under the LGA. Any of the other things that you suggested, I imagine, would be a judicial review against the government itself, like in Fitzgerald and Muldoon.
Thank you.
Okay, any other further questions? Okay, so we've got a very short time frame to do a very important task, and I think Andrew's comment was quite, his analogy was quite good with looking at it as a major event, storm event, and how we would deal with that. I mean, there's so many variables in here. We're assuming the other councils agree with what we're suggesting, and we don't know. The government may have another circular agenda, and they've decided what they want to do anyway, and it's a consultation progress, and we do a whole lot of work, and the government's made its mind up. So, there's a whole lot of things here. So, and I don't think anyone's ever going to have a go at us for the very short time frame that we've had to make a decision. If we don't make the right one, which appears in hindsight, well, we only had a short time. So I think we can have some comfort in that. So that's my opinion's worth for what it's worth. Okay, so next item on the agenda, and thank you, Craig, and thanks, Sam. I think you probably can stay, actually, because you're both on it. No, it's just Craig. The next item is the enterprise risk and emerging risk, and ask for a mover and seconder, please, for that the report enterprise risk and emerging risk update be received. And Deputy Mayor Fong and Councillor Barker, thank you very much. And I'm going to put it to the motion. Those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Right. Craig, again, can you please, over to you, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Mr Chair and committee members. Before taking questions, I thought it would be helpful to provide some context regarding the shape and structure of the report and the direction of the travel for the Enterprise Risk Management Framework Refresh Program, particularly in light of the commentary that preceded this report. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge that the ongoing interest in attaining visibility of Council's most significant risks and discussions around potential top 10 risk views are top of mind To that end, I've sought to look at where we are in terms of our highest residual risks in our system, and what's becoming clear is that they naturally aggregate into the 6 enterprise risk themes that are presented in the report, which positively reinforces the direction of the enterprise risk management refresh. The report before you today substantively has been prepared from the enterprise risk perspective rather than a ranked list of individual or operational risks. And one of the key findings from the work thus far on the enterprise risk management refresh is that the organisation has a large number of operational risks which score highly in isolation but do not necessarily provide governance with a clear view of Council's overall risk exposure. And it was mentioned just in the earlier session around the variances in risk appetite across the variance and the risks. Each of us might have a different weighting, so that's reflected. The substantive focus of the report is in 3 areas, and so I'd like to draw your attention to section 4.1, which is page 45. That provides the overarching enterprise risk architecture. So as mentioned, rather than presenting just numerous individual risks, organisational exposure has sought to be aggregated into 6 enterprise risk themes. And I would draw your attention to the trend indicators and the indicative positions relevant to tolerance, which again was suggested at the previous session, and I think a decision made on risk appetite and tolerance workshop and or awareness. Secondly, I'll draw our attention to 4.2, which is page 46 and 47, that looks to identify the key enterprise exposures which is sitting behind those risks, so not necessarily the risks themselves, but the exposures, and they include things such as financial sustainability and affordability pressures, infrastructure resilience, workforce capability constraints, and digital and cyber dependency. And they represent through the Chair and yourselves as committee members, the more significant organisational pressures that are currently part of the management focus. And then thirdly, section 4.3 introduces the notion of emerging risks. Traditionally, risks reporting has focused on looking backwards, and this is to focus on us looking forward, to identify the areas of strategic uncertainty that may become significant over time. And those include things such as artificial intelligence, climate adaptation, insurance market pressures, and so on. And so in simple terms, the report seeks to address 3 major questions. What are Council's major enterprise risks? What are the most significant pressures that are sitting beneath them today? And what emerging risks may require further attention in the future? And with that in mind, I open the floor for questions, and thank you for receiving my report.
Are there any questions? Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your report. And I do note that one of my concerns was raised and dealt with at the beginning of this agenda, so thank you for that. But this still weighs heavily on my mind, and you talk about it in the emerging enterprise risks, particularly risks that may materially impact long-term organisational resilience or strategic outcomes. It's also, I guess you could say, covered in infrastructure and service delivery and digital and information. Tying those all together, there have been some pretty serious things happening in the United Kingdom recently through disruptions through cyber attacks in London, particularly London councils, including Westminster, Hammersmith and Fulham. So they got a real problem that they had to deal with. And then there is one called the Volt Typhoon campaign, which is our very own Five Eyes have stood up and said we need to pay serious attention to this. So not wanting to give away any strategic secrets, are we fully up to play with making sure that our systems are protected from that level? I mean, you're talking state-sponsored actors, not just local hackers?
Certainly. To address that through the Chair, thank you for your question. At the highest level, Council already has, through the adoption of their technology platform systems and processes, some robust risk mitigations that exist. There's also the recent recruitment and appointment of the CIO, and in addition to those frameworks, the vendors themselves here domestically and those that have a requirement internationally have some fairly stringent technology requirements. That said, Councillor Patterson, it's a moving feast. What I can say as an adjunct outside of my role within Council, I sit across some international standards development in artificial intelligence and international standards. And so sit across 160 countries. It's one country, one vote, and it's very topical and timely, these discussions. Wherever possible, we have the most robust mitigations that are afforded to us at this time, noting that it's a significant moving feast. New Zealand also has within it its remit regulation and legislation that has been quite advanced for its own jurisdiction rather than Europe and North America, who have used legislation rather than the best of industry best practice regulation and legislation to enforce those activities. But it's a moving feast, I would acknowledge. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? Okay, so I've got some comments to make. I'm really keen on seeing the top 10 risks, and we discussed that at induction, and Craig and I have been talking about that. I think we're on a maturity path here, and I think this is something that this council will get, or this committee will get in the near future. I find that the report that Craig's produced, while really, really good report, and particularly on stuff on emerging risks, I think that's really top notch. The report for me is very generic, and I'm not seeing enough about what actually are the risks in the council. Now, we've got one risk that's going to come up in the paper today and later on in the paper, and yet there's no visibility of that risk in here. So for me, it's really simple for me. I need to know what the top 10 risks are, what's keeping management awake at night, and management then should be saying to you, these are the issues we've got. The problem we've currently got is that we don't really have. Craig has a system of risk tolerance and risk appetite, which I think he has constructed, or it's in a policy, but those criteria of tolerance and appetite needs to be agreed by the council, because you need to tell management whether we want to have a high tolerance for this risk, or do we want to have a very low tolerance. What I'm talking about here is health and safety. You would generally say we don't have any risk in health and safety. We'll throw lots of money at it to make sure it's right, so we don't breach the Act. But there might be other areas in the business. We might be involved with developing property. I don't think we get into that, but if we did, for example, we might take a bit of more risk in that area. So and that's where his 6 criteria that he's got there with various parts of the business. We want to have an understanding from councillors, where is your risk appetite? Because this underpins really the whole business in terms of the long-term plan, how you set your long-term plan, where you take the risk, where you spend the money. So I think it's been on the agenda for a while. We want to have a risk appetite workshop and work this with you. So we need to plan that. That's an agenda item, and we need to probably do it sooner or later, because, as we've just talked about with the Head Start, it would be a useful thing to introduce that as well, just to get you familiar with what appetites are and what tolerances are and all those things. So I think if we could get that, that would be a really good start. And then once we've got that in place, then the next month, hopefully not the next month, the next quarter, when we produce this, we might then be able to get a list of what the top 10 risks are affecting us, because they are the ones that should be driving the decisions of the business and how we operate, in my humble opinion. So that's my penny's worth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciating not necessarily a direct question, but just for clarification. From the previous agenda item, there is a risk and appetite focus specifically on Head Start backstop, and also in addition to that, a specific focus on our wider appetite and tolerances. So I just make the point that as part of that education and awareness as well as adoption, one was a request to look at appetite and tolerance specifically for Head Start and backstop proposal, and in addition to that, already placed was a requirement to look at appetite and tolerance for all of our enterprise-related risks. So thank you in full support of that, and look forward to the opportunity to participating in that activity.
Yeah, thank you very much, Craig, for your report. It's of high quality, and thank you for understanding where I'm coming from. Cheers. Okay. Next item on the agenda, health and safety and wellbeing performance. I ask for a mover and a second, please, that the report health and safety and wellbeing performance for the period 1 March 26 to May 27 be received. Can I have a mover, please? Mayor Wang and Councillor Wang and Mayor Tapsell. I'm going to put forward to the motion that those in favour? Aye. And those against? Okay. Passed. Carried. Thank you. Welcome, Clint and Jesse.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair, Mr. Chair and elected members. I'm probably jumping the gun here, but today's health and safety wellbeing agenda provides the committee with both a current performance review and a deeper look at our longer-term system improvement. Firstly, the Health and Safety and Wellbeing Performance Report covers the period of 1st of March to 27th of May 26. It is intended to give you assurance that our systems are operating as expected, with a balanced view across both lead and lag indicators. Pleasingly, there were no notifiable incidents involving employees during the period, and overall trends continue to show improvement, supported by strong delivery of our assurance program and ongoing implementation of improvement actions. Secondly, our next report will be our Safe Plus assessment and implementation updates, steps back to provide a governance level view of our broader health and safety maturity journey. As you will recall, the independent assessment undertaken in June 2025 resulted in an overall developing rating, reflecting the complexity of integration at that time rather than a lack of commitment. Since then, we have made deliberate progress in aligning systems, strengthening risk management, and establishing a more robust assurance framework with a clear program in place through to July 2027. Taken together, these reports show that we are not only maintaining operational performance, but also systematically strengthening and the underlying systems and controls that support long-term health, safety and wellbeing outcomes. I'll now hand over to our Health, Safety and Wellbeing Manager, Jesse, to take you through the reports in more detail.
Thank you, Clint. I'd like to draw your attention to section 3.1, the lead indicators. And I'd like to highlight the significant safety improvements that have been made in relation to critical risk working roadside. This is the result of safety and design elements being incorporated into the design of our inner city garden beds, specifically separating the distance between workers and live traffic. And as you'll see in figure 3, there's been a dramatic reduction in near-miss reports involving live traffic. And in the context of the work that's gone on, this is that reduction points to actual risk reduction as opposed to change in reporting behaviours. Section 3.2, lag indicators, just to sort of echo Clint's points, no notifiable incidents involving employees for the quarter or for the previous 12 months. One notifiable incident was reported by a contractor involving an electrical hazard. There's no significant injuries were sustained in that incident, and WorkSafe did not take any further follow-up action. They're happy with the satisfied with the actions that we've taken, the contractor have taken in relation to that matter. Section 3.3, continuous improvement in key programs. We continue to make good progress against our health and safety implementation plan, with all actions due for completion by July 2027. And just following on from that, I provided a deep dive report on the Safe Plus assessment that led to the implementation of the health and safety implementation plan. And I'll take the report as read, just to summarise, the assessment was conducted at a challenging time in just following the integration of Infracore. Since then, deliberate progress has been made in addressing the systemic issues, including aligning structures, integrating legacy systems, and improving the consistency and transparency of risk management. And the overall trajectory is steady progress towards a more mature and effective health and safety management system. Happy to take questions.
Are there any questions? I just had one. If you could keep reporting back to us in relation to your 24 recommendations that you got from report. Just let us know how you're going with it. So it's just our way to check that it's all going ahead as planned. Okay, so we've got some other recommendations. Oh, sorry, beg your pardon, there's someone else.
Oh, thank you. I'm happy to move it if there's a seconder, just because I have a comment.
Sorry?
I'm happy to move it if there's a seconder, because I just want to make a comment.
Okay. Who else is going to second that? Thank you. Who's going to? Councillor Wang. Okay, and do you want me to read it out? That the committee notes that no notifiable incidents to Health Work Safe New Zealand occurred during the period involving Rotorua Lakes Council employees, that the committee notes that one notifiable incident to the Work Safe New Zealand occurred during the reporting period involving a contract worker, and that the committee notes that the ongoing delivery of health and safety implementation plan and assurance program. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Mayor Tipsell.
Thank you. Just really wanted to acknowledge that we're now capturing this information. Obviously, there was quite a significant change when we brought in some services from Infracore, but I think that it's really great that all councillors are here in the audit and risk and able to hear that we've now gone down to 0 near misses, as an example. I think when you look at the trend as well, those near misses, I know as soon as it was made public that we have had some incidences of near misses, our public came back very strongly to us as well, that actually that's not, they didn't see that as acceptable either, and those that do keep our inner city looking beautiful should be able to do that while being safe. So I really just wanted to acknowledge, number one, the reporting that we're all getting as councillors, as decision makers of this council, and also number two, the fantastic significant drop in near miss reporting, because we do want to keep all of our staff safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Tapsell. And thanks, Clint and Jesse, for your comments. And yes, certainly concur with that. It's good to see those reducing trends in activity, in incidents, etc. Okay, do we need to move and second this? We've already done that? Okay. Okay, is there any other comments? Take it to a vote. And I put it to the motion to the vote. All of those in favour, say aye. Those against? Passed. Right. Next paper on page 67 of Stella, Internal Controls Assurance over Key Council Policies. Ask for a mover and a seconder, please. Miss one? 7.7. Oh, 7.7. Beg your pardon. 7.7 health and have we done this one? So we've done this one. Okay, so that the report Health and Safety Plus and Safety Assessment and Health and Safety Implementation report be received. On a mover. And thank you, Councillor Barker and Councillor Wang. And I put it to the motion that those in favour say aye. Those against? Okay, motion carried. Right, next one. Sorry about that. Section 7.8, internal control assurance over key council policies. Ask for a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Brown, Councillor... somebody else? Barker. Okay, that the report, internal controls assurance over key council policies be received. And put it to the motion that those in favour say aye, those against? No. Motion carried. Invite Greg to overview the report, please.
Afternoon again, councillors. Councillors, I'll take this report largely as read. The purpose of this report was to bring forward our assurance practices on our key housekeeping policies. Now, we have a range of policies within the organisation, but these ones have been identified by our chair to bring forward as part of our housekeeping policies. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have regarding the report. Just one note on that. I have noted in the report that our sensitive expenditure policy has a 2025 review date. I think just wanted to notify you that it's actually 2027, so we actually have got an up-to-date sensitive expenditure policy. Apologies for the misprint in that report.
Is there any questions, clarification points? Tapsall.
Thank you, and thank you through you, Mr. Chair. And I do also want to acknowledge that councillors now have all of the policies easily accessible through Stella as well, if you want to look them up. But I did just want to ask a general question, if I may. With any introduction of new policies, are we able to also, at some stage, look at potentially removing policies that are removing or combining policies to make them simpler? I mean, there's a long list of policies that we do have as a council, and to ensure that they are practically implemented, let alone known across the organisation, and with councillors at this table, I just suggest that we also proactively, as we refresh them, can we also look at whether they can be merged with two other policies or two other policies removed.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Your Worship. Yes, that is a practice we try to implement, and as we did with our international relations policy last year in our sister cities. We do have a piece of work going on at the moment in our IT department, where we have a lot of policies that we are trying to merge into one, so that we don't have the same complexity of a number of policies that might be quite light touch in individual sense, but if we can merge them, we will do that.
Is there any other questions? Councillor Bassey, thank you.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair, just to refresh my memory, whenever we decide or whenever a policy is due to be renewed or reviewed, that generally comes to council for council to approve, correct?
Councillor, through you, Mr. Chair, depending on the policy types. So we have a range of policy types. We have bylaws or legislative policies that are on a legislative time frame. So bylaws, for example, would be 5 years at creation, from creation, and then 10 years following that. The certain policies, like our local alcohol policy, is on a 6-year review cycle. Our gambling is every 3 years. 3 years, I think, off the top of my head. And so those are sort of your public-facing policies. We also have some council policies, and yes, those would be ones that you would see coming to the table, such as a submissions policy. Those are available on our council website. And then we have management policies that are internally focused, and those would not necessarily come to the council table. They get approved at the executive table. And so we have a standard 5-year review cycle on our policies, but dependent on the policy, we may review them sooner. So you'll find that a lot of our HR policies are on a 12 or 24-month cycle, just because of the change that is required within that space. So those would be internally focused and wouldn't come to the council table necessarily, so depending on the policy category that it fits within.
Thank you. So just to confirm that management policies are for the management to decide, and we don't have any oversight of those.
Councillor, you do have oversight of them. That's the purpose of this report. I think you've also got all of the policies within Stella for you to review. So what I guess you do have access to view them. If you find any concerns or raise any concerns, you're welcome to raise them with the Chief Executive, and we can tackle those through the next review.
Okay, thank you.
Just on that question, some councils do bring their what I'd call housekeeping policies to their Audit and Risk Committee. There's two schools of thought on it. First of all, has the committee got the expertise to be able to determine whether the policy is right or can add value or not? That's one. And then the other one is, well, committee should, is it too much information to give the committees, and they should only just be told what the changes are? And so there's two schools of thought on that. It's up to the committee really. If you want to see all these policies, we can make sure I can ask the management if they would bring, every time there's a review, to bring one to the table, and you can all have a look at it. And if you would like that, over to you. That's my thoughts on it. I've got a lot of personal experience in doing all these things. I've done them many times, so I can add a bit of value from a committee point of view. But then again, I could also add a bit of value outside the committee. So it's just what you want, really. I'm not too phased. I mean, they've got very competent staff that know what they're doing. So in that respect, they're called management policies for that reason. So I'll leave it over to you. If anyone's got a burning desire to make a comment, then please do so, and we can act on it. Yeah.
Just to kick us off, through you, Mr. Chair. Personally, I don't really have an interest in seeing every policy come through this committee. I've got every faith in the staff to execute their duties with that regard. However, I wonder if it is an opportunity, similarly to the understanding our risk appetite, to understand our focus areas for policies. If there are particular policies we are interested in being brought to the table at the time of review, that may be a more productive use of the committee's time than just bringing every policy, regardless of its nature or scope. So that's my initial thoughts on that. And yeah, I do enjoy reviewing and writing policy, but not to this extent around this table. I think we do have probably other things that we could put our time towards. Yeah.
Any other comments? Well, could I make the suggestion that, I mean, you see the policies there. This report will come up on a probably once or maybe twice a year, and you can see what progress is. I mean, our role here is to make sure that they're getting reviewed on a regular basis when legislation changes, when things changes. Our staff updating them, for example, the IT one. Are they adding extra things in there? So we can put our little pennies worth in. But if you're quite keen on a policy, then please, through me, just let me know, and I'll ask the staff when one comes up. Yes, I think the councillors would like to look at that one through Andrew. Okay. All right. One other question. Any questions? Sorry. Councillor Sanford. Sorry.
No, I think you've answered my point. I was just going to say that I think leaving them with management is good, and if we have some oversight, if management has concerns, or we can always delve deeper into these ourselves, and if there's something that we spot in there, then we can raise it with Andrew. But yeah, I don't have much interest in that sort of oversight of management. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you for your input. Right, next item is page 76, Treasury Update. Internal Review Work Plan. Internal Review Work Plan. Okay, this is on page 72 of Stella. Okay. Ask for a mover and a seconder that the report Internal Review Work Plan be received. Councillor Tapsell, Councillor Wang. Okay, and put it to the motion. Those in favour say aye. Those against, passed. Thank you. Invite David to overview the report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This report covers the proposed internal review work plan for the remainder of the triennium. So through the last couple of meetings, we have had a number of papers come through sort of discussing the best way that Council can get assurance over a number of its critical functions, whether it be an internal audit or versus a a deeper dive assurance review. This paper brings forward in Section 4 a proposed work plan for the remainder of the triennium, a series of reviews to take place with a view to focus on the value for money, the control effectiveness and risk reduction in each of those areas. So alongside the Chair, we have identified a number of key risk areas, and this paper proposes a work program through to August 2028 to look at each of those areas and bring forward a report similar to the work that we did through Becca on the operational contracts in the last meeting. But I'm happy to take comments or questions on the paper.
Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your report, David. Under its terms of reference, the Audit and Risk Committee is responsible for agreeing with the scope of Council's internal audit and assurance program in conjunction with the Chief Executive. I don't know if you have seen the notice of motions that I submitted to this committee that have been paused for technical reasons, but would those items fit into this program, or would that be completely separate? How does that work?
I might, through you, Mr. Chair, I don't believe the CFO is familiar with what has been submitted through. I might ask Governance Manager, Mr. Keek, to respond.
Thank you, Councillor Lee, and through you, Mr. Chair. So, Councillor, I think referring to your notices of motion, there were 3, yes. And they were declined through the delegations of this committee aspect, but that was not the only reason, and we have discussed this in detail with yourself around maybe certain aspects would fit within this committee, and so the wording around those would be quite critical as to how those would be brought forward, brought to this committee going forward if that was what you wished. So certain aspects around the long-term plan, there is a part of the work program will be bringing forward some of the long-term planning and reviewing through this committee at some stage. So I think if that's what you're referring to, Councillor, aspects within those notices of motion may fall within this committee, but the wording as they currently stood fell outside of the delegations of this committee.
Okay. Okay, that sort of answers my question, but next A&R meeting is August, if I remember rightly, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Sounds about right, yep. Any other questions? Okay, I've got one. I just want to gain assurance that there would be budget available to do these items. It's all very well planning these things, and we have structured it so that we are trying to minimise costs, but also at the same time protect the organisation against things that could go wrong. So I'm very mindful that I think these are value. These items that we've chosen are value for money. So I just wanted to get some assurance that the budget would be available.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can confirm that there is budget allowed for the upcoming annual plan year for the works that are scheduled within that financial year. Beyond, will be a discussion through the long-term plan, but I'm sure that there'll be an item that we work through for the funding for the long-term plan. I can confirm that budget is allocated for the items that are scheduled for the for the upcoming financial year.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Right. Okay. Ask for a mover and a seconder, please, that the committee endorses the proposed risk-based internal review plan through to 2028, including the use of external expertise where appropriate, with a focus on the value for money, control effectiveness and risk reduction. Thank you, Councillor Wang. Thank you, Councillor Barker. Put the motion to the vote. Those in favour?
Is there any discussion?
Any discussion? Sorry. No. I'm going to put the motion to the vote. Those in favour say aye. Those against? No, there's no no's. Okay, motion passed. Thank you. Right, next item on the agenda is the Treasury report. David, you're doing this again. This is on page 76 of Stella. Ask for remover in a second, please, that the Treasury update report dated May 26 be received. Councillor Brown, Councillor Barker. Put it to the motion. Those in favour, say aye. Those against. Okay, that's motion's carried. Thank you, David. Let's proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My report covers the Treasury update to the end of May 2026. There's a number of items I'd like to bring to your attention with this report. Firstly, within the executive summary, you'll see at the end of May we had a debt to revenue ratio of 232% against our internal limit of 250%, which essentially gives Council a borrowing headroom of 38 million. Now, it's important to note that Council's debt to revenue ratio does change throughout the year as depending on Council's billing cycle, for one reason, and for borrowing that happens throughout the year. If we were to rerun that test today, that number would be 222% due to a large number of billing that we have done since the number of report, which would bring our headroom to around 60 million, but that number is still not a large number. I want to draw your attention to that, particularly as we come into the preparation of the long-term plan and the requirements for us to be constructing a financial strategy that delivers long-term value for the Council and for Rotorua. And that as CFO, my role is to guard that capacity jealously. So just drawing to your attention there that we do not have an unconstrained balance sheet, and that this is an area of focus that we will be working through the long-term plan. Secondly, with regards to interest rate risk, so you'll see there that we are compliant with our interest rate risk as at the end of May. We are working with the PwC on our upcoming revised Treasury policy, and there is the potential for there is some thought we will need to put into our interest rate risk, particularly through the lens of rate capping. So at the moment, our Treasury policy gives us the mandate to chase the lowest weighted average cost of capital. That's what we do. We go out there, we chase the absolute lowest price, which does mean occasionally there can be volatility when markets change, wars start, or things happen. Should Council face the prospect of rates capping, that mandate will need to change away from absolute lowest cost and volatility towards more of price certainty. So making sure that when our revenue is capped, that we structure our debt in a way that we can guarantee price and not have that volatility from year to year. And that will need to. I'm bringing this as an area of focus that when we come to talk about the next iteration of our Treasury policy, that is something that we're working on with PwC, that we can structure Council appropriately should that happen in the future. The third item I'd like to bring to your attention is within 3.4. So Council has what we call counterparty credit risk. It's in the policy to ensure that Council does not concentrate its cash or its dealings too heavily within one particular institution, and we do have a breach of the counterparty policy as at the end of May. We entered into an arrangement to do some pre-funding for some maturities and later in this calendar year, and by virtue of putting all of that pre-funding with one bank, we have gone over we have a limit of 30 million per institution, and we're at 31.8 million with a particular institution. As a breach that we will carry through until the end of the calendar year, until that debt is repaid. But I wanted to bring that to your attention as the Audit and Risk Committee, that you are aware that through chasing the highest term deposit rates we could, and placing that with one institution, we have caused a breach of policy in that matter. But I'm happy to hand over for any questions on the report.
Are there any questions? Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. Just going back to the executive summary, and you've listed 5 council KPIs on page 76 of the agenda. We've got the liquidity at 114% with a council limit of 110%. It seems quite a slim margin. Is there anything that we should be concerned about?
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Lee. Through the Chair, the LGFA covenants require Council to hold a minimum of 110% liquidity. Council does that through a number of ways, through holding cash or through holding committed facilities. We balance the need for liquidity based on the cost of obtaining it. So if we were to increase that liquidity cover, we would either need to pay premiums for additional committed facilities or hold higher debt and higher cash, essentially. We balance the, so that as a management team, we are comfortable with that amount. It is a balance between making sure that we can more than cover our immediate expenses, and we're doing it at a cost that is not a burden on the ratepayer.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah, thank you, David, for... sorry? Oh, sorry, Councillor Buck, I didn't see you.
Oh, that's okay. Thank you, Chair. Just noting the motion that's in front of us regarding the breach of the Council's Treasury policy around the funds with Kiwibank exceeding the counterparty limit. We're asking here for this committee's approval to go back to Council to accept this. Is that my understanding, and what risks are around that, please?
Yes, that's what we're asking, and the reason why we're asking Council to approve it is because Council has delegation to approve any Treasury breaches. So that's why it has to go do the circle. Yeah. Okay. Thanks for bringing the covenants to our attention, David. I must admit, I was talking earlier about one of the 10 risks facing the council, and I thought to myself, we're really close to our net debt to total revenue, which means that we've really got not a lot of firepower left in terms of we want to borrow more money. We've got plenty of facility there. But the fact is we probably can't use it because we're going to breach in our covenants. So this is going to be something that we're obviously mindful moving forward. So I would hope to see this as one of our top 10 risks. I would think it would be. Anyway, that's just a comment from me. The only other thing I had to say is, let's see. Thank you for clarifying the breach of the policy and for providing those motions. So I think that's all I've got to say. Yeah, that's all I've got in here. So I put those motions to... I move the following motion, and I'll read it out, that the committee notes the breach of the Council's Treasury policy with investment funds with Kiwibank being above the prescribed counterparty limits, and recommends to the Council that it is approved and will be corrected when the investment funds mature on the 31st of December this year, and that the Council... Sorry? On 31st of December this year, and that the committee recommends that any breaches to the Council Treasury policy, once discovered, are reported immediately to the Chair of the Audit and Risk Committee. Could I have a mover? I move it, and that's seconded by Deputy Mayor Kai Fong. Thank you. Those in favour? And those against? Okay, that motion's passed. Just one question I had, David, and it slipped my mind before. This breach that we've got with Kiwibank, I asked if you could get the okay from our Treasury advisors whether they agreed with it, because one other option we have is that we could repay some of the money to Kiwibank, which would be economically silly, but it's just important that our advisors have been contacted and they agree with this approach. You could confirm that, please.
Look, there's no objection to the recommendation.
Okay, thank you. It's just process. Thank you very much. Right. Thank you very much, David. I recommend that the Audit and Risk Committee resolves to exclude the public on the grounds contained in Section 48, Section 1 of the Local Government Act, the Meetings Act. Moved by somebody. Thank you, Councillor Wing. Second by Mayor Tapsell. Okay. Put it to the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Okay. Pass. Thank you. We're now in public excluded. And we can take a 10-minute break, please. If anyone would like one. Get some water.